The opinions expressed on the Custody Queen Show are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for personal, professional legal advice. The persons discussed are fictional and not based on actual clients.
Thought it was love, had kids in between. You can count on us, we're the Custody Queens. Yeah, you can count on us, we're the Custody Queens.
Good morning, everyone. This is Kristen Holstrom, and I am here with Sam McBride, and I am also here with Racheal Mastel. She is an attorney here from the Kainen Law Group in Las Vegas. Welcome, Racheal.
Thank you.
And for everyone listening, we had her father, Ed, probably about a year or so ago, and he had some great stories. So we're going to have Racheal pick up and tell us about all the drama and family law here in Vegas.
All right, but before we get started, we're going to do our CQ Talk Box. And it's basically a bunch of questions. Everyone kind of knows about it by now, I'm sure. But we, as an icebreaker, like to kind of keep a dialogue open and make sure we're asking questions to get to really know each other.
Yeah, and what I love about this is when we go through our cases, and I'm sure Racheal, you can attest to this too, is, sometimes I'll ask my clients, how does this make your child feel? Or how does your child respond to this? If there's maybe allegations of one parent feeling that the other parent may use abusive measures of discipline. And it's amazing to me, and myself included sometimes, there's so little that we know about our kids on some levels. We all know what their favorite colors are, what they love to sleep with at nighttime, or what their favorite shows are. But this CQ Talk Box really allows you to have really meaningful conversations and questions with children, friends, sisters, brothers, parents, and really get below the surface.
And I actually also am beginning to think it helps you get to know yourself, because you kind of start. I often will look at these questions and go through them, and I can ask everyone questions, but then when I start to think, well, I don't even know the answer for that myself. So I think it's good that way.
Or you think when you answer these, oh, Kristen, you have so many issues.
Well, speaking of issues, Kristen.
Let's break in Racheal. Let's break her in loose and hard.
All right, Racheal. So first question to you. If you could change one thing about the past, what would it be?
That's really hard. I try not to do regrets, and so I try not to not that I don't think about things that I've done, that sort of thing, but I try to just have a little, grace for myself and say, okay, look, this is where it went. But in high school, a guy that I was not interested in, and I was 14, so I didn't really understand he was asking me on a date. And we went to a concert, and I was a little rude and didn't really process. I have a problem with my filter sometimes.
Same.
And that's the one thing that anytime I think about it, I'm like, God, that was such an awful thing to say. What was wrong with me? So I guess that.
Okay, well, now you have to tell us what you said.
Yeah.
Okay, so we went to a concert, and I can't remember who it was. And I turned as we things were, we were sitting there, and I was like, just so you know, I really hate it when people sing off key. So if you can't sing, just don't sing during the concert. And I was like, and it took probably 3 hours, and I was like, oh, that was bitchy.
Okay, if that's the worst, I was just about to say,
if that's the worst thing that you've done, you are an angel.
It's the worst, but it's definitely the thing that bugs me, because we stayed friends, and I'm like, I always felt bad about it.
It's just direct.
Yeah, I got a lot of cringeworthy moments. But I don't regret them, no. All right, Kristen, so if you could change one thing about your past, what would it be? And why?
I am a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. I don't think you understand when it's happening, why it's happening, or what the benefit of or the lesson learned that's coming out of this. But I think, as the years go by, you can say, well, this happened so I could get here, or this happened which taught me X, Y, and Z. So I honestly don't know that anything personally I could go back and change anything. There's one big thing in our history, and I watched so many documentaries, and I was in college when 9/11 happened. That is one thing that I wish the world could take back, because I think it changed so much on that day. And it's so, as I'm explaining this now to my kids, and my oldest has questions about it, and I read a lot of books and watch a lot of documentaries, and it's hard answering those questions to a 9-year-old of how somebody could do that to so many people. So I guess if there's one thing in history that I could go back and say, that really had an effect on my life. I was old enough to understand it. I was a junior in college. I was standing in my silver Nikes and Old Navy or Gap overalls, and it was before morning class having coffee, and everyone just kind of fell to the ground and was screaming. And I don't even think I even understood a little bit of the magnitude until, and we actually, I think our soccer game was actually canceled that afternoon. And that's just one thing that I think in my adolescent years on that I was like, wow. But I think everything happens for a reason. I just don't think we understand what that reason is for several years later. What about you, Sam?
Oh, I don't know. I agree with you. I do think that everything happens for a reason. But I will say that I wish that I could change, like, the little girl, the little stressed out girl that didn't realize that, like, everything is not the biggest deal. And I still do that, right? Like, I still think everything is the biggest deal. And I'll, like, have to talk myself down, like, don't worry, like, you say this a lot, this too shall pass, you'll get through it. So I think I was really hard on myself growing up as a kid. And so I think I wish I could go back and be like, hey, like, just chill out. Like, it's okay that you didn't run a 6-minute mile and you're not in the mile club. Like, you're gonna get through this, So that.
Yeah, no, I'm there with you. I'm there with you. Someone had fairly recently. Someone told me it's not worth worrying. If you're after it's passed, say a month later, and you're not worrying about it, it's like, was it really worth all that stress? And if I look back at the things that I was worried about, law school, high school, even early in my career, marriage, and you look back and you're like, God, I wish that was my biggest problem today. Right. Like, I really wish that was my biggest problem.
Yeah, but we all walk out of law school with anxiety disorders anyway.
Sure. Oh, so many.
It's so difficult to then put that aside.
What a good point that is. My mom's a lawyer too, and I was actually talking to her the other day. And
all three of us have parents that are lawyers. That's funny.
Yeah.
And we're all so amazing. I say that with a smirk, people.
But we were talking, and we're like, there is something to be said about, like, life before law. Like, we were all different people. Like, it's like you can't unring a bell. You can't unring, like, it's like you're embedded with liability. Like, everything's risk averse from here on out. Yep. And I feel like you see, like, your friend, and, like, an example in family, like, I'll see a friend online and they're holding, like, a red Solo cup. No problem. They're having a beer, or they're having a drink around their kid. And instantly in my head, I'm like, well, why is that filmed? Why is that posted? Child Protective Services is going to get involved. Like, I go to the worst. And I don't think I'll ever undo that about myself. I don't think you can.
No.
There's got to be a support group or something.
I mean, we all probably walked out of law school with sleep disorders, anxiety disorders. I mean, analyzing things that don't need to be analyzed, including TV shows, But yeah, no, I agree. It really does a number on you.
Yeah.
And same thing. I'll be at a pool party, and it's like I'm watching someone who may not be watching their child as intently as I am, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, there's the red cups, who's got cameras, who's writing this down in a journal, and you can't get away with anything anymore.
Right.
Anything. I see. Weren't we just doing something recently, and someone was like, oh yeah, we were doing management training, something that Dane is having us do. And the guy was like, oh, I guarantee this. And it's like, all of our little...
Oh, yeah.
And I go, you can't guarantee anything. You don't even know if that judge is going to make it alive that day. You don't know if he gets the flu. Like, you can't guarantee anything. He's like, I can guarantee this. And I go, no, you can't. And he's like, oh, you lawyers.
I won't even guarantee things outside of the law anymore.
Yeah.
Like, there is no always or never in my vocabulary anymore. It's like, well...
Potentially.
Right. I even, like, people are like, are you coming to the birthday party? That's 3 days from now. I was like, yeah, I mean, probably.
I'm planning on it.
It's my intention, but, maybe something happens. I'm not really...
The asterisk underneath it, unless X, Y, and Z happen.
Right.
No, it's funny you say that, because I think we're both the same way. It's like, well, I will use my best efforts to make it happen, so it's a very high probability that I will make that game.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I read every contract.
See, I'm not, like, in my personal life, I'm not great with that. Like,
Oh, no. I had a contracts professor, and he was amazing, first of all. He loved contracts so much, he would dance, like, as we're answering questions. If you got the answer right, he's like, yup, that's it. And I'm like, okay. But he hammered into us that, if you don't read it, you can't challenge it. And when I go buy cars, I usually take my dad with me just because having, the gray hair and the extra appendages make everything easier sometimes. And so I'll just take him with me, and they'll give me the contract, and I'll spend 40 minutes reading every provision of this contract. They tried to get me to sign a lease, and I was like, well, okay, I'll look at the contract. And I looked at it, and I'm looking at the sales guy. I'm like, well, but what does this term mean in this contract? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, well,
you're fighting with a lawyer that wrote it down.
Right. I was like, if you can find out the definition of this, I'll consider that. But until I know what this term means, no.
See, that's funny that you just said car, because before you even said buying car, I'm thinking I am the worst car buyer on the planet. I walk in and they're like, that's the MRSP. Done, sold, sign me up, extra warranty, got it, sign me up. But if it's, my client's prenuptial agreement or something, I will go through every word and poke holes and question. But in my personal life, I'm
like you.
The worst.
I'm like you. I actually turned in my car, walked across the street to the In-N-Out, and bought a car online. And they delivered it, and it worked out great. I love my car, but I just I ordered a milkshake and bought a car.
Yeah, no, Jeremy, my husband will literally, he'll have it in his mind that he wants to start looking. I won't even be on the radar. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Maybe I should start looking at new cars. I'll go in, literally buy it sticker price, and walk out. I'm like, oh, I got a great deal. And Jeremy will go 6 or 7 dealerships. He will negotiate, and then he will wait a year. And I'm like, oh no, that is just, I do this for a living. There's no way. Right. And Jeremy's like, you paid more than the sticker, Kristen. I'm like, oh, but I saved $500 on the warranty.
I'm definitely my own worst client.
Oh, me too. All right, so let's have Racheal. Let's have her tell us about some of her. Well, first tell us about your law firm and what you do, and you have some amazing accolades. So why don't you share that?
So I work at Kainen Law Group, which I know Ed, who's my dad, has come on and kind of told you about the firm before, but we have 5 attorneys right now, 1 who's part-time, and we just have a great environment. Honestly, we've got some transitions occurring in our firm right now, and we had a meeting today, and the meeting was all about, how do we support the staff during this transition, and what can we do to make them feel more valued and relaxed as we go through this, so that they're not, stressed out and scared by these things. And I just really love that. Our firm is really a huge family. I mean, obviously my dad is there. One of his partners was working at his office as an associate before I even went to law school, so I worked with him. They've been family friends for a very long time. His wife taught my little sister piano. I do a lot of our custody cases. I'm the appellate lawyer in our office, so I do all of our family law appeals. I have some that come in from outside, and a lot of them that, are in-house appeals and that sort of thing, which that's probably my favorite area of practice.
Because you don't have to go to court that much?
No, actually, I do go to court. I like the technical aspects of it. The thing I love most...
reading all the contracts.
The thing I love most about the law is the puzzle pieces. So appellate work is really all about the puzzle. And I like the argument style, honestly. I like having the clock and you can't shout over each other and one person's at the podium and then the other person's at the podium. It's question and answer and that's it. But I'm a member of the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, and by the end of this, so will you guys be.
She's recruiting.
I am. I'm a member of the International Academy of Family Lawyers. I'm a specialist in the state of Nevada. I think I got a certification. I went to Washburn Law School, which is the family law school in the country, and I have my certification from law school. This is always what I intended to do with my career, and I've been doing it for 14 years.
Did you always want to do family law?
I thought I did. I have changed my mind to some extent after doing it.
I was going to say after doing it.
But no, my family is very family oriented. My sister is 9 years younger than me. My brother's 18 years younger than me, and I'm really close with them. I see them all the time. My sister and I talk on the phone at least once a week. She lives in Milwaukee. She's a psychologist. But so yeah, that's kind of that I wanted to help kids. I wanted to give that support and that, make sure that families were focused on the right things and that, they came out of this healing and being families. So.
Well, you nailed it, and you're like the perfect guest because that's what we have been instilling into people for the last 3 years that we've been on the show, is that divorce isn't a horrible thing. Custody isn't a horrible thing as long as it's done right. Mm-hmm. And, it is so important to Sam and I that the children walk out of this transition unharmed, sometimes in a better place. 2 homes, 2 loving parents, 4 loving parents, it can be even better. But I think our life's mission is really to have parents see what the consequences are to the children of spending 15 years in high conflict litigation and spending every dollar that you've ever made on experts and more experts and counter experts and sometimes that is needed. And, we say that sometimes it is needed, but more often than not, it's important to pick your battles, pick what is the most important thing to you, and for us to educate our clients that these are your options. You don't have to run into court and fight over that crock pot that was sitting in the garage for 9 years just because your husband wants it.
Did Ed tell the Beanie Baby story?
I don't think so.
So
let's hear it.
It's on YouTube actually. You can find it, but there was a case, I forget how he was involved, but it made the news in Nevada where years ago, when they were important to people.
They're still important.
Yeah, I remember
Rachel.
you used to see cars.
They're not worth what they used to be.
But you remember you used to see cars like on the freeways with like hundreds of Beanie Babies.
Lined up in the back.
Yeah.
These people had like this massive collection. I mean, I think it was like 3 of the large moving boxes, and they could not figure out what to do with this collection. So the judge made them bring all of the Beanie Babies in and line them up, and they each got to pick one at a time. I'm pretty sure it's on YouTube.
And it probably cost, $50,000 for that meeting to happen.
Yep. I tell people all the time, I said, when I sit down with my clients, I was like, look, we're settlement focused. I mean, first of all, I don't need you to keep the lights on in the building. Like, there's a line. But more importantly than anything else, why are you giving me $20,000 when you can take your kid to Disneyland with that?
Go on a family vacation.
Right. Or put it in their college fund. Like, do you want your kids to go to college? Don't give me that money. Put it in their college fund. Like, we can do this without this being
so hostile.
Toxic. Yeah.
And a lot of times it's just the emotions have to dissipate, or the hurt or the anger or whatever one of the parents is usually going through. But when and there are cases, Sam and I have had a couple of cases that we've had for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And those are usually involving a very significant safety.
I'm on 10.
I think we just hit 9.5 or actually 9 on the dot. And I only remember because I remember meeting with this person a couple months after my daughter was born, and she's 9.5. But we have a couple of those. And when the safety concern is there, obviously it changes everything, whether it's domestic violence or a drug addiction or alcohol or whatever that concern is. But so many people, they call and it's like, well, we talked about this in another episode. I want a bulldog. I want this. I want that. I'm like, no, what you really want is that someone that can help you resolve some of these issues without cashing out your 401k.
Right.
Yeah, and a lot of times I think people don't realize that even when they have these disputes that they can't reconcile, there's still a lot of other things that they do agree on. They just don't know it, right? So if you kind of come in with this onset of like, well, we don't agree on anything, we have to go to court, we have to fight it out, you're going to spend a lot more money. And a lot of times when you really sit down and you go, okay, we might have a dispute regarding custody, but maybe we don't have a dispute regarding the weekend custody. Maybe we only have a dispute during the week, or maybe we only have a dispute regarding this house, but not that house or that retirement. There's a lot of ways that you can sort of compartmentalize the agreements you have to help reduce the overall cost of your case. And Kristen and I, and I'm sure you do too, really preach that because we want to make sure that you're not spending your assets and all your available income fighting a fight so that at the end of the day, there's nothing left to enjoy and to move on with your life.
Or often less than what you came in with.
Right. I push counseling. I don't know about you guys, but my first meeting,
that's in our consults.
Every inquiry, it's like, so do you have a counselor? Have you thought about this?
I'm a very expensive, I'm not licensed and I'm very expensive. You don't want my therapeutic advice. I even have my own.
Right. Yep. I tell people that too. I definitely do.
Every therapist has a therapist.
Yep. But I like to tell people, so I don't know about you guys, but one of the things that they taught at Washburn is that sociologically and psychologically, we're finding out that the brain has made marriages in particular, or long-term relationships, its own entity. So I tell people all the time, there's, in any marriage, there's you and me and us is its own person in your head. And so when, you have to understand, us is dying. And so if you've had a parent die, if you've had a sibling die, an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent, you're gonna go through all of those emotions in that messy, non-linear way that you would go through for that. And so I tell people, I was like, it's not that you need help. You might want coping skills, but you need a grief counselor. You need someone to help you process this death. And I find that the clients who take me up on it, it really improves their ability to navigate a case without as much
100%.
hostility.
When you take the emotions out of, custody in particular, just letting the emotions sit for even just a few weeks, like you get served with a response and they call you, well, I want this done right now. It's like, no, let's sit on it. Let's think about it. Let's craft a settlement proposal and let's see what our starting point is.
Right. Yeah.
All right, now being in Vegas, you've got to have some good ones here, Racheal. You've got to have some quirky, any Elvis divorces,
No Elvis divorces. Years of very interesting lifestyles and occupations that have come through. But actually, my favorite thing about doing family law in Vegas are international annulments.
Ooh.
So here's the thing. Particularly people who come over internationally, they don't think it counts. Like, legitimately, they don't think it counts. And so what'll happen is these people will come over like on spring break in college, or just on kind of a fun bachelorette weekend, whatever. They'll get married to a friend.
like Britney Spears did.
Yeah, but 15 years later, they are going to get married to the person they're actually in love with.
And they're married.
And their attorney there goes, well, but you're married. And they're like, no, we're not. It was in Vegas. And it's like, no, you are. And half the time they've lost track of this other person entirely. Like, you have your really good friends from college, and then you have the people you partied with on spring break.
Yeah.
And you can't find them anymore. And now you need to have this marriage annulled because otherwise,
I thought about that, right?
Yeah, it's hysterical. It's actually, I joke with people all the time, everybody has known that for years, the motto of Las Vegas is what happens in Vegas stays here. We changed the motto. It's now what happens in Vegas only happens here. And the reason was because there was an entire group of people who would come to Vegas and legitimately think that it didn't leave Vegas, whatever they did. That if they got into a fight here, that arrest warrant didn't transfer to the state they lived in. If they had a car accident here, they didn't have to pay because it didn't count where they were. If they got married here, it doesn't count outside of here. And
Wow.
it's like, okay, but it does.
So I'm assuming annulments would be, do you guys do a lot of those?
We do.
Can you explain for our listeners what annulment is?
So an annulment gets rid of the marriage from the day it was entered. So instead of a divorce, which says, okay, we've been married for 10 years and we have all of these assets and debts and children and alimony to deal with, an annulment says it never existed.
Like it never happened.
Right. And there's two different kinds. There are ones that are void because they just, under the law, could not have happened. So if you marry a sibling, if you get married as a minor and you don't continue that marriage past the age of 18, those if you're married to somebody else at the same time, those just never count, and all you're doing is going to court and saying, hey, it never counted, can you just affirm that? Then there are voidable marriages, which are the ones everybody hears about in movies with we were too drunk to get married, we didn't realize it was a real marriage. And so what it does is it kind of erases the slate. So it never happened.
Now, is it easy for someone to request a voidable annulment if the other side is not agreeable?
No.
I was gonna say, that seems like it'd be pretty...
You rely a lot on contract law, actually, in doing those annulments. And we definitely have had cases. I had an interesting one that had to do with same-sex marriage and the question of whether or not an annulment is appropriate in a state where there was a DOMA. And so there was all these kind of things with that. And, you really get down into, you have one party who says, well, no, I thought this marriage counted. And the other person says, well, no, it didn't. And then you're in a he said, she said. And, we've had ones where the marriage license wasn't recorded. And so it's, well, it didn't count because it was ceremonial and we had no intention of recording the marriage license. And the other party goes, well, but I thought you did record it. And so, it all comes down to kind of the evidence and the credibility, and there's usually a trial.
Because I say, you have two people go out. One says, oh, I drank way too much. I don't even remember. And the other person's like, no, it was the best night of my life. She was totally sober.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And by the way, she's a millionaire.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And the question is, do we have witnesses that are going to say we knew this was fake? Or do we have witnesses who are going to go, no, this, we all thought this was real? And, do you have do you have any of that? And, what was the one we had where the marriage license wasn't done? We relied very heavily on, honestly, how expensive that the marriage had been, and the ceremony and the number of people invited and the dress and the wedding videos. And it's like, really? You spent $20,000 on something you didn't intend to be real?
Yeah.
I mean, how much money are you sitting on here?
Yeah.
And you guys don't have juries in Vegas.
We do not.
So the judge is making the judge is both the trier of fact and of law. So the judge is deciding these trials.
Right. I think only Texas and Georgia have jury trials at this point.
That's all I know of.
Yeah.
And I still laugh every time I hear it.
Interesting concept.
crazy.
I mean, the Alex Jones thing was fun, watching that with the jury.
When we did the Trial Institute in Texas, and they were saying that there was jury trials for custody cases, that still blows my mind.
Yeah. I don't know that that's the best.
Well, no, I mean, sometimes you look around at jury duty and you're like, wow, these people are going to be deciding my fate. It can be a little sketch sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So don't even get there, people. That's where you should really try to hire a good, educated, smart attorney and try to come up with some sort of plan and detailed case strategy that best suits your needs and your family's needs.
Let me ask you guys a question, though, about jury trials. So Nevada hasn't determined, when you input tort claims, like, for assault and battery where there's been domestic violence and that sort of thing, whether or not you can have a jury for those portions of your family law case. Has California dealt with that?
To my understanding, it's just straight the judge. Yeah, I haven't heard anything.
I mean, it's an interesting issue. I could see, hypothetically, if you had some sort of bifurcated issue that was being handled in civil. But I think that the civil case, there are some cases we have in family law where there are civil portions to it, like a Marvin action.
But those are even through the civil court.
Right. So I don't see that happening, but that's an interesting point.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's possible.
We do. So you mentioned Marvin. Our case that validated Marvin is called Hay. We do those in family court. They're not civil court cases. They're quasi-family law.
See, and I actually agree with that, because I know California doesn't recognize the common law marriage, but when you've been nowadays it's more common for people to be together 10, 15, 20 years, raise kids, buy a house, share bank accounts, but never get married. Because, what's the divorce rate in California? 70%.
The divorce rate is a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. So I think as the younger generation gets older, I think they're a lot more hesitant to run to Vegas and get married.
Yeah, I think we're going to start
seeing... So that I agree with.
I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of those.
That I agree with. I definitely think there
cases.
is the quasi-family component.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we are all out of time. This went by way too fast.
But don't worry, we'll be back again and have Racheal on again from the Kainen Law Group. Now, Racheal, where can our listeners, viewers, where can they find you?
So our website is kainenlawgroup.com. And our phone number is 702-823-4900. We're located at the top of Cheyenne and the 215.
And all of that information will be posted on the screen. If you go to YouTube, you can catch the full episode and all of the contact info. But thank you everyone for joining us this Saturday and every Saturday. You can call us at 1-800-419-7772. That's 1-800-419-7772. And remember, let love rule.